What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Barefoot Garage, Site B. We're working on this 914 and we're going to attempt to replace the blown out wiper motor. Alright, so this 914 went to Palooza last year in 2020 and the wipers stood straight up like a McLaren, and it stayed that way for the rest of the trip, and it's been that way for most of the year. So in preparation for our Fest 2021, we are going to try to get these wiper motors going. Unfortunately, the wiper motor is very buried. It likely involves removing the gas tank, the fresh air box, all of the venting system for the gas tank, some of the fresh air hoses, and it's pretty far in there. So we're going to start tearing into it and try to get as much access as we can to test before we pull the half full tank out and go from there. So let's set up the time lapse and we're going to start tearing this thing. Shorter. Hey, now it's working. All right, we are in the front of the 914. We've got our expansion tank, our wiper reservoir, the fuel tank, the master cylinder reservoir, the fresh air box, and way down here is the wiper motor. So when you turn on the wipers, the voltage drops and it kind of behaves like the wipers have got a dead short. So we're going to attempt to put a power probe back here and try to power them up and make sure that that's the problem, because the wiper motor has to pass the airbox, has to pass the tank. So there's a lot that's in the way of getting this out. So eventually this car is going to have its tank out to get a stainless supply line for the carburetors. But for now, we're going to try to get that thing checked and then we'll start tearing into it. All right, so we've done enough checking to confirm that we're getting power into the wires and we are not getting any movement out of the motor. So the next thing is tank out, airbox out, and then we can get to it. So what you can see is we've unhooked the tank strap, undone the two 10mm bolts on the little expansion tank deal, unplugged the sending unit, and we removed the charcoal canister from this 73 that's got it up here in the front. So really the next thing we're going to do is, this car is a front pump because it's carbureted. We need to jack it up, pull the tray off where the master cylinder is, and ideally we can unhook it from the pump underneath, and then you'll be able to lift the tank straight out. Just one line, should be super easy. So that's what we're going to do. All right, guys, so we're jacked up the car. We're taking this under tray off because I do believe the carbureted low pressure pump is under here. So the goal is going to be to hook the outlet of the tank off to the pump down here and then lift the whole thing out, rather than like doing the lift the tank and going through that stupid little hole. I'm hoping to be able to do it right here. So we're going to pop this tray off, 2 13s, 2 17s, then we can get to it.
Ready? Much better. On that cardboard over there, maybe?
And then we'll need some vice grips and pinch it. Ideally, you don't want it to All right, so we got the gas tank out with minimal bloodshed, and you can see we now have access to the air box. And ideally, we're going to have to take that connection out, pull the drains, and slide the whole thing forward. The only thing that's weird and difficult is undoing all of these connections down here and getting them back correctly so that the valves and the controls work on the inside. So really, now that the tank's out, it's pretty easy. You can see down in here this carbureted car, and you can see the supply line on the top and the return line on the bottom. We're gonna put that stainless line in, and so honestly we'll just take that return line out completely and keep it plugged from the tank side. So next is the air box, and we'll start taking off some of those little connections. All right, we pulled the airbox back. It's got a 10 mil here, and on the other side, we did not disconnect the cables, which I think is a super win, and we just slid it out. And you can see there's an easy way to tell if your car has ever been painted, because very few people mask or take this out to do it. So it's a good time to put a seal on the airbox lid, get this cleaner, paint it back black. But we found the problem. The wiper motor is not attached. And up here on top, if you look through the cowl, you can almost see the bolts. So something has caused this to shear, lose, move the bolts, whatever it is. And I'm sure this wobbling around, it bound up and it just completely seized. So we're gonna go ahead and get the last wires off. I'm going to take the whole assembly out from the top and from the bottom. And then we can do a little more diagnostic and investigative work on the bench. They had washers. Success. So what the problem was these bolts are gone. We found 2 out of the 3, and I'm guessing at some point they just worked their way loose. This came down, that bound up right there, and it smoked the motor completely. You can see a little bit of crusty on that wire, and
it also fried the connections on the stalk.
Yep, so definitely dead shorted, but it was boom, seize, done, because the whole mechanism actually moves fine. There's no problems with the mechanism at all. So we could just change the motor, but this mechanism will be a good spare for somebody. We'll just pull the motor off and swap the whole new assembly in. There's the old one, and we'll show you the new one. All right, here's our new one. Here's our old floppy one. So you can basically see this motor gave it up right here, and that is the position it should be clocked in. Overall, looks like it's no problem. You can tell this one was on the car when it had a respray a long time ago. It does not appear that this one did, or at least it was a black car. So we know that this works. I think the best case scenario would be to get it up to close to the car, plug it in and see it move before we put it all the way back. Really all that's holding it in is when it's in the car, it sits like this. We've got 2 connections here up through the cowl, and it's got a little rubber bumper that hits the firewall. But you can see even on this used one, loose. So we're gonna pull that out. It's got lock washers or wave washers, but it's getting locked tight as well. And we will get this thing in here nice and snug. You can even see on the backside where it's kind of had some motion in the past. So I'm sure a lot of these get that. It's such a hard to get to part. I'm sure not many people are servicing it. So we'll get this tight, put it up there and test it, and then we'll get it back in the car. All right, so I've got my wiper mechanism, and it's a good time to see how it works. Basically, this goes around, and so the motor can run a continuous circular motion. Can't really do it very well with my hands, and it wipes your wipers back and forth. Pretty cool little mechanism. All really nice bushings in here. These plastic bushings have held up super well, probably because they don't see much sun. So there's your wiping mechanism in action, a high speed and a low speed, and it's got hard stops on both ways, so it can't like go crazy off the windshield. So we went ahead and tested out the old motor out of this mechanism, unbound up, and it does work as well. So we're gonna put them both back together with some Loctite, so we'll have a good working spare for anybody's 914 that needs it locally or whatever, and we'll determine which one is the better one to use, and we'll pop it back in the car. So a lot of work to replace 3 bolts, but wipers are necessary, and we know that this will do it. All right, you can see the cleaning crew, not me, was in here and got this thing nice and detailed up. Still needs the airbox painted back black. And we're gonna go ahead and slide those wipers in once it's a little bit more dry. We are not gonna get the tank back in because it is gonna get a Tangerine supply line. So we'll probably go ahead and get the wipers in, tested, and then we'll leave the airbox and everything else out and come back for part 2 for that supply line. All right, so we've hit a stopping point. We realized that what I thought was a rubber bumper is actually a rubber mount, and it was broken off, and I'm sure that's what kind of caused the failure on this one. Just too much extra stress with that motor hanging just from the mounts here. So we're gonna source that, and then we'll be in good shape putting it back together. And we're back to the wipers. This is the piece that we found was broken. It's a little isolator and bracket. There is part number. There is the other part number. This came from Auto Atlanta, and basically this goes between the underside of the front firewall and the wipers. And what was happening is with that gone, it was causing a lot of stress in it that way. So we got some seals while we're at it. These go on first. These go through the cowl, then the chrome, then the lock nuts, then the caps, and the little caps here. So first thing to do is to get this in from the wiper side, push it through the firewall, and then we'll go ahead and tighten this nut on the inside a little bit later, and we'll get all of our seals put in place. So here's our wiper. It sits about like that in the car, and if you can imagine, this goes towards that inside firewall. So this screws in like this. Get that nice and snug. I guess you could put a nut on the backside if you're really worried about it. And then it is held in place by 1, 2, 3 mounts. So we're going to pull this last piece of rubber off here, get some new pieces slid in place, and then we'll get it popped into the car. So here's a quick explanation on those seals. This first seal, this one, goes in the inside. This one that has this recess goes in from the outside. Then the chrome, then the washer, then your wiper arm, and all the pieces like that. This little recess kind of helps center it in the opening for the wiper arms. So we're gonna go ahead and put this thing in place, and I'll show you guys how to get to this from the backside, which probably does require removal of the speedometer. All right, so remember we put one of those grommets on the backside, the one that's fairly smooth. Now we're gonna put on this one here that has a step. And like I said, that step is gonna fit into the hole for the wipers here, and it's gonna center and locate that. Then we're gonna put our chrome trim on, because you gotta have chrome. And then we're gonna put in our chrome locking nut here. So I'm just gonna hand tighten this for now till we get that back one all the way done. I want a little bit of flexibility, and that's it. So remember that mount, we've got our speedometer out. Don't forget to take out your cable, your bulbs, and keep it close by because it's got that reset cable, or take your reset cable off. You can see pretty clearly right there. So we just need to grab a nut washer and we'll tighten it up from this side, and we can give it a final tighten from the outside.
All right. 60s, it's one of those big like
all right.
buses.
All right, time to test. Is it gonna smoke or is it gonna work? We got something.
Is that low?
We got something else. It's hard. Leave it running, James. You can see mechanism doing its job. You can see just through there how that mechanism continuously spins and moves that rod. So we got low, we got high. It looks like it's good. All right, so you saw us struggle with the air box. We have that back in. We have a new seal on the top. We got our side air tunnels in here, air ducts. We have our drains on the air box, and we went ahead and bolted in the front strap on the tank retainer. So make sure that your sending unit plug is out of the way, and you can probably get away with going ahead and putting your tank overflow drain in. and make sure that you've got your hose. So when this hose goes in and down, you really want to get kind of a twist in it so it lays down nice and flat and it doesn't pinch. It's going to have to lay down pretty far into here. So routing that can take a couple of tries, but it is something that you need to make sure you do. About 22 inches seems to be about the going rate for this line coming out of the tank. So we're going to go ahead and bring it over. It is dry now, so we can go ahead and hook up the tank to this and then see about getting it put in. All right, that's gonna do it for the Barefoot Garage tonight on the wiper motor. It's a great time to change your fuel lines, your tunnel line, any of the other things you need to do underneath the tank. It's a difficult job, an airbox out is a pain, and you wanna make it right. So order the rubber mounts, order the seals, clean this airbox, the fresh airbox, whatever you need to do when you are doing it. So, as always, stay tuned to the Barefoot Garage Jacks right here on YouTube. Let us know what you're working on your 914, or stay tuned between episodes at Barefoot Garage Jacks or on Instagram. See you guys.